Talking was that Syria is free and Ukraine will be free. Putin, you will see all of Syria will be free. Putin, you will see Ukraine will be free. Freedom for Ukraine. Slava Ukraine.
Thank you so much.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's bonus episode. I am your host, Andrea Chalupa, and I'm going to be answering questions from our supporters at the Democracy Defender level and higher on Patreon. We've got some great questions in to wrap up this end of the year Q&A for the month of December 2024. If you asked a question and it somehow fell through the cracks, send it again. We'll put it at the top of our list for our Q&A to start the year off right in January 2025. It's coming. We are going to make the coming months and years some of the most creative and productive in our lives. We're digging deep for that inner power. We're going to bring that light out and shine it to blind the monsters in the face. It's going to be a time of beauty. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I know people are scared, people are anxious about what's coming. You are not alone in this. We have each other. We're going to get through it together. There's so many models for us around the world today and throughout history. So humanity's been here before, and now it's our turn, and we're going to fight through it because we have no other choice. I want to start off with playing a slightly edited version of my opening comments at the recent Gaslit Nation salon to celebrate Syria. We had some, I'm getting better at Zoom. Okay. I'm going to have a co-host to help me. I'm going to mute everyone upon entry so we can have cleaner audio. I apologize to everyone. We did not expect to have these Zoom calls be so massive, and now they are on Mondays. And so just thank you for bearing with me as we sort of learn to ride this rodeo out together. And so I'm going to play an edited version of my comments on Syria to open this bonus show. There was a week of euphoria the other week as this massive rebel alliance that, yes, of course, had backing from Turkey and the US, but it was homegrown, and it was a diplomatic charm offensive by its leader Jelani, and talking to all of these different factions, bringing them all together, including insiders of the Assad regime, getting them to flip, reassuring minority groups, including Christians, and building this big mass rebel alliance that overthrew Assad, sending him running to Russia. Syria is not a Hollywood happy ending, right? It's still going to be a cauldron of uncertainty and violence. That's just inevitable. As you see those reports come in, please stick to credible sources. For Syria, there's a lot of disinformation agents out there who are compromised. They've accepted money backing from Iran or Assad or linked groups. And so I will link to some really solid sources on Syria to follow as the situation develops there. People that I know personally in my life who have been there for me during times of crisis. These are trusted voices, experts on Syria. I'll link to them in the show notes. Follow them as the situation develops there. France was so poor after World War II that it tried to sell itself to Great Britain, its ancient enemy. That's how poor France was. And that did not come out until decades later, so classified. But that just shows you that wherever there's been war, wherever there's been mass murder devastation, as there was across Europe in World War II, it takes a very, very, very long time for those countries to rebuild. And it will take a very long time for Syria to rebuild. And we should have solidarity for them by following trusted voices on Syria and not the disinformation agents like Vanessa Beeley, Max Blumenthal, Aaron Mate, and so many others. For the history books, here are my comments on Syria, followed by answering questions from our wonderful listeners at the Democracy Defender level and higher on Patreon. And if you want to get your question in at the Democracy Defender level or higher, be sure to submit it. I'll add it to the January Q&A that's happening. And then to the folks on Patreon, I'll see you for our next salon on Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Looking forward to that. We're going to have a Gaslit Nation listener who's a therapist walk us through the psychology of why Democrats have no fight in them and why they pre-surrender. So I look forward to that discussion with you all. Now, here are my comments on Syria.
This is absolutely amazing. After all of these years, we are live on the international TV. This is amazing. This is unspeakable. This is us after 50 years of darkness. This is us after 50 years of death. This is absolutely amazing. I'm shocked.
Ever imagine? You know, we've had 14 years of civil war. Did you ever imagine?
No. This is not. You can't even cross this idea over your mind. Never. This is actually. It's every day you woke up and you go out of the door and think that I'm gonna die now. I'm gonna die now. Tomorrow I'm gonna die. This is all of what we have been raised on for the past 13 years. I have no idea how to tell you how I am feeling right now. This is absolutely amazing. I have no words.
You have no words. You know, some people are concerned that a lot of the rebels are Islamists. They are from organizations that have extremist ties. Do you worry about
For
this?
me, after what I have witnessed yesterday and what happened inside Naya prison, this is absolutely fine. Let's have the rebellions. Let's have this Islamic whatever shit over going out. This is more peaceful than what the regime and the Assad regime was doing to our mother, to our daughters, to our people here in Syria. Anything that would come after the Assad regime would be more humane. You can say this is unspeakable. This is unbelievable.
Judy,
I have no words. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for sharing our freedom. Thank you for being
All right,
with us.
everyone, welcome. It is December 9th. This is the Gaslit Nation political salon. We just had a week of a big groundswell of a rebel coalition liberating all of Syria. The only thing that's left is basically a Russian military base on the Mediterranean, which has seen a big influx of flights coming and going, evacuating that military base. This has been a majorly emotional week, full of joy, full of reunions, and full of prison systems that you can not even imagine, that go beyond the dystopian novels out there. I want to put in the historical record that Assad's killing machine, his sadistic torture chambers, included a press where you can press a body so flat it become just crushed, completely crushed like paper. And those pressing machines would have a drainage system for all the blood and guts and everything that would come out of the former human being. And on it goes. And so they're still finding piles and piles of body and clothes and skeletons. Some of these prisoners are women, many women, who are being released, some with several children that they gave birth to in prison. These children are the product of rape by soldiers, by guards. And these are children that haven't seen grass, haven't seen the light of day. The level of sadism is what I want everyone to stop and sit with, because it's something that the common person out there, that where Syria is just a passing headline, isn't going to bother to stop and sit with. It's very, very, very heavy. It even goes beyond some of the stuff I've seen from the Soviet Union in all my years of research, and that says a lot. Obviously, there are reports that former Nazi officers, former Nazi Gestapo agents, came in and trained Assad's father, just like Nazi officers trained dictatorships in South America. So, even though we defeated the Nazis in World War II, the Nazis found refuge with dictatorships out there. And so I want to remind everyone that the war we're up against, it's not a war between Democrats and Republicans by any means. It's a war between human beings and sadists. Human beings and sadists. And I'm bringing all this up is because Trump very intentionally came to power through violence, through courting violence. These were not just dog whistles. He was full on regularly talking about putting Liz Cheney in front of a firing squad. That was a recruitment tool for his base. That was an excitement that he was putting out there to draw in folks. And so I know that seems very dark, right? Because Syria just got liberated. They're all celebrating in the streets, and now it's our turn to face off with this monster. But I think everyone needs to understand also the level of hope and determination and endurance that these Syrians had to get to this point. The revolution in Syria started in 2011. It was a popular uprising. Assad quickly clamped it down. Iran and Russia quickly came to back him. The US eventually pulled out when Russia crossed lines that the US wasn't willing to cross. And Russia was bombing hospitals, bombing schools, just carrying out just what they're doing in Ukraine, basically, all across Syria. And that was the muscle that Assad depended on. And on top of that, Iran was using Syria as a land bridge to bring their soldiers across Syria and into Lebanon and taking over Lebanon, which they would then use to wage war against Israel. So the big loss of Syria for Iran and Russia cannot be overstated, because Russia also used Syria as a military base to launch their missions all across Africa, where they carried out horrific crimes of imperial expansion, pillaging several African nations, propping up their proxy warlords in Sudan and elsewhere to flip governments in African countries and steal from those countries. Thanks to their military base in Syria, Russia was able to steal over $2 billion worth of gold across Africa, which they then used to prop up their war machine. And now that's gone. That's gone. And so the impact this is going to have for African countries, for the African continent, for the people in Lebanon, for people in Israel, and it just on and on the list goes. And of course, Ukraine, because what this does is it shows the world that Russia isn't as powerful and scary as they want you to think they are, right? Russia is always threatening nuclear war. Is the big takeaway that I want you to all share with your family, friends, when you go home, see people for the holidays and talk, oh, did you hear what happened with Syria? A very, very big takeaway from this is that Putin's nuclear war threats are all bluster. They got completely booted out of Syria, and they're not launching nukes. They're not doing anything in retaliation yet. They bombed a couple of hospitals on their way out, but they put up already in Moscow the flag of the Syrian resistance at the Syrian embassy in Moscow. And so they're ready to do business with this new changing guard that's coming in. But this new changing guard has to decide whether they want Russia there, because it's all about establishing a new decentralized, more inclusive Syria. Already, the leaders that led this rebel alliance have said, they put out a statement saying, leave women alone, let women live how they want to live. Like, don't come after the women. They've even extended that same olive branch to Christians and other minority groups in Syria. So it's looking very promising. It doesn't mean it's not going to be chaotic. It doesn't mean there aren't going to be skirmishes and other things. And what you're going to have is a lot of prominent accounts on the left who have amassed a following that's pro-Gaza for obvious justifiable reasons. You're going to have them spreading disinformation and trying to convince you that Syria is going to become chaos like Libya after the West intervened in Libya against Gaddafi. You're going to have those accounts, and I have names. I can drop some names in the chat here because I've been taking screen grabs of who these folks are. It's basically the Aaron Mates, the Max Blumenthals, the Rania Kaliks of the world, the gray zones, accounts that have had funding from Assad, trips to the paid by these dictatorships to whitewash them. Aaron Mate went to Syria and said how great it was. Max Blumenthal went to Venezuela, which is propped up by Russia and Iran, and said how great it is. Rania Kalik went to Syria and took selfies with the prison system there, and on it goes. And yes, Tulsi Gabbard is a staunch Assad apologist. And all of this puts into sharp relief like how we have to absolutely stop her entering the White House, because she is a plant of these forces. Just like when the Soviet Union came crashing down, all the archives became available. So all of these archives of the state security, like the secret police, those archives became available for researchers. And that's why you had this new wave of historians coming in, like Ann Applebaum, Tim Snyder, that suddenly dominated in the field because they came up into the world of academia when these archives suddenly became available. Now that these archives are going to open up in Syria of the state security apparatus, how they operated, who they had on their payroll, that's going to reveal a lot of names of folks in the West who were in their pocket. And so that's, that is something that could expose Tulsi Gabbard. And when the same should happen to Russia, when Russia inevitably falls, we'll have a big reveal of who else was on Russian payroll. And as I always say, if they sound like they're on Russian payroll, they're on Russian payroll. So that's what's coming next. And the other thing I wanted to highlight is the Syrians never, ever gave up, even though they were horribly maligned. They had all of these fashionable leftists, like the people that I named, coming after them aggressively, harassing them, amassing massive followings, harassing them. They never, ever, ever gave up. They kept going to such significant risk to themselves and their family and their families. One of the most poignant things I've seen in the last couple of days are how people are showing their faces on social media because they were afraid to do that. They're working under an alias, or they're coming out and saying, this is who I really am. This is my real identity. I've been in the dark this whole time fighting for Syria, fighting for human rights. And no one even knew it because I had to be so secretive about it because they would otherwise hunt me down and kill me, even living abroad. That's extremely significant that this is how these Syrians operated for so long, because it's also a lesson to us. The stark level of cruelty that exists there in Syria is immense, but yet people never gave up fighting for them at such great personal risk. And I think that's an important lesson to us here at home. No matter how dark it gets, no matter what people write about us, say about us, no matter the death threats, no matter what they're doing to others who have been captured, we absolutely have to keep going and never give up, even if you have to go dark. Meaning you don't post about it. You're not so outspoken as you might be, right? But you're still doing the damn work and you're still supporting those who are doing the damn work, and you don't go away. You stay in the fight, but you bob and weave however you need to for your own personal security. I think that's extremely significant. The other thing I want to highlight is a personal story. There's a wonderful American Syrian by the name of Muaz Mustafa. He has been a friend of mine for a very long time, speaking out about what's going on in Syria and Ukraine. We've been on panels together. When Russia's full scale, I'll just give you an example of the hell that he's gone through. He is the subject of a great documentary called Red Lines, all about the start of the Syrian revolution, the popular uprising that then turned to a civil war. And if you watch that documentary, you'll see his personal, like he was an average Joe, he's like one of us, and a war breaks out in his country and he takes it upon himself as a Syrian American to do everything he can to speak out and to go to Washington to build support. And that documentary Red Lines covers his journey. And one of the things it shows you is how when he was speaking out, he would go on MSNBC and get absolutely destroyed by Chris Hayes. Chris Hayes was just demolishing him on live TV for trying to drag America into a war in Syria. And he was like, no, you don't understand. And it's just a crushing example of how so much of the left was unified in trying to smother Syria with disinformation, because that is a tool of isolationism. If we can dehumanize you, if we can spread lies about you, then we don't have to save you. Your life doesn't matter. And even we're going to take it a step further. We're going to justify what Assad's doing. That way the guilt's off us. You deserve to die. So hurry up and die. That same level from the fashionable left that went on against Syrians for so long, it's been growing against Ukrainians in recent years, right? Right? Like, hurry up and die, Ukrainians. Like, so hurry up and surrender to Putin so we don't have to worry about you anymore, right? Let's just sacrifice Ukraine to Russia. So this is problems off our table. And so that's what's been going on. And despite all that, the Syrians still organized and fought like hell. And I witnessed this. So I remember taking a cab late at night. It was like 1 a.m. from Newark or somewhere. And my cab driver, we got in conversation, and he's trying to convince me that the CIA and Mossad created ISIS. And as a matter of fact, he had a video proving it. And in that video was my friend Muaz Mustafa, who is a Syrian activist. It was just a random clip of him in Syria, as though this chopped into this disinformation video. And I'm sitting there watching this thinking, do I tell this guy who's driving me at 1 a.m. in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere, oh, that's my friend? So then he turns off the freeway and does God knows what with me. But I was just thinking, I'm like, you know what? This is, your brain rotted. It's incredible. Like just seeing one of my friends pop up in some zombie video like that. And that's how he was targeted. And when Russia's full-scale war in 2022 broke out against Ukraine, I was heavily pregnant. It was a high-risk pregnancy. And I had the baby to worry about, the baby that was coming, and getting through this pregnancy safely. And when the worst happens, after spending my life researching, writing about Russia's genocide against Ukraine, and suddenly this history circling back and happening again, and it's not just my grandparents' generation, it's now my generation it's happening to. I got on the phone with Muaz Mustafa, and right away I was just bawling. I just completely collapsing into tears. And he calmed me down, and he was very sweet. And he's like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to start building. And in that one phone call, he and I launched an organization called SUN, the Syria-Ukraine Network. And he asked me, he's like, could I hire you? I have some money. You could be the executive director or whatever. And I said, no, but hire Olga Lotman. So we got Olga Lotman a job. Thank the Lord. She's a brilliant Russian mafia researcher who needed a job at the time. So we got her hired at SUN. And together we've been launching all of these Ukrainian and Syrian initiatives. We had Muaz on the show where he shared all of these important survival strategies from the war that Syrians learned from surviving the Russians. And we translated some of that into Russian, into Ukrainian, and circulated it among Ukrainians. We helped get visas for Syrian doctors to go over to Ukraine to help prepare Ukrainian doctors for what was coming. Like, we sprung into action, and it was extraordinary. And so the fact that here was Muaz and all these Syrians that had been through such hell, they had their own reason to feel tired on a soul level, but they were amped up and fighting and sharing resources with us. And that helped keep us going in this critical moment. So I want to remind you all, no matter how dark it gets, understand that these monsters, because Assad's a monster, Putin's a monster, the Ayatollahs are monsters. Like, we're human beings slaying monsters. Like, we're up against monsters. I want to remind you all, these monsters do not last forever. They do not live forever. And they are terrified of us. If they were not terrified of us, they wouldn't take such extreme lengths to try to silence us and erase us. But they cannot silence us. They cannot erase us. There is a spark in every single person that is relentless. Life is stubborn. Life is extremely hard, right, to destroy. And life just keeps coming back and coming back. And that is exactly what the Syrian people have done in all these years. And even when they had scant resources, they still chose to work with us in Ukraine. They still chose to join forces and work with us. And when I was sending my congratulation messages to my Syrian friends, one wrote back saying, it's because of the Ukrainians that you put up such a fierce resistance that we're able to be free. Obviously, that's not the whole story, but the fact that here in their moment, in their celebration, they're able to say, we did this together. We survived together. We're fighting these monsters together, and we're going to win. So just remember that, like, we're none of us in America's darkest hour that we may be entering into now. None of us are alone right now. And none of us are going to give up on each other right now. And we're going to fight relentlessly, no matter how dark it gets. And we're going to bob and weave and do whatever we need to keep ourselves safe and live, because part of our revenge against all of them is staying alive for as long as possible and surviving for as long as possible. And as the Syrians are saying now to each other, our revenge will be the laughter of our children. And just remember that, like, we're all going to live, we're all going to flourish in this time ahead. And our revenge against these idiots that we're up against is going to be the laughter of our children. Like, no matter how dark it gets, believe in this light that we witnessed this past week in the liberation of Syria. That light belongs to all of humanity and all the people that are on the side of humanity. And that light will be ours no matter what happens here in the US in these coming years.